Hey, Brian from Evolve Flagstaff here. Gonna go over a movement pattern that I call the hip hinge. Okay, it's a very powerful one that I teach in most of my patients with lower back pain, as I find that the hip hinge allows us to separate back motion from hip motion. And people who have recurrent bouts of lower back pain often combine the two. When they go to move their hips, they move their back. And this leads to overloading of the back throughout the day or when they're lifting or picking things up from the ground. Okay, so what it looks like is when we're here, we're gonna get the torso nice and tall and move our hips behind us. And you'll see my torso moves, but my back doesn't really move. I don't extend, I don't really flex forward. The motion comes from hinging, as if I had something here moving around that hinge at the hips. Okay? What we don't want is what I call a coupled motion, where the hips move and the back moves with it. This often looks something like this. The shoulders can come forward, the back is a little bit rounded, there's some tension there. Okay? And I just want to be clear, I'm not saying that flexing your back forward is dangerous or inherently painful or anything like that. We want to move all of our joints in a lot of different ways. But I find that people who struggle with back pain, they don't have access to the hip hinge. It's not in their movement repertoire, so to speak. They've never been taught it, they've never practiced it. So every time they go to move forward or pick something up, they're getting this coupled motion, this tension on the back. Okay? A few times that's not painful, but if that's the only way you move, the only way you lift things, okay, then you're not getting access to the posterior chain, you're loading the back every time you start to bend down. Okay? So we practice the hip hinge, and that gives us another way to access that bending forward and to really offload the back and train the posterior chain. So that can be a powerful tool for people with injuries when we're rehabilitating them and getting them out of pain. It's also a powerful tool to build muscle strength and athleticism, as if we can get that hip hinge down, then we have a lot of power from some of the biggest muscles in our body, the posterior chain. Okay? So I'm going to show you a few techniques to work on this hip hinge. One is that we use a drawer, okay? So we're going to stand a few inches from the drawer, squeeze our shoulders back, feet are about hip width, and then we're going to just keep the knees relaxed, and we're going to try and bump the drawer shut with our hips, okay? So it looks something like that. Boom. Shut the drawer with your hips. Sounds silly, but that gives us a nice hip hinge. If I'm to do a coupled motion, back and hips together, I might nudge the drawer, but I don't get that same pop backwards. So it might look something like this. I can touch it, but I'm not quite moving it, okay? So, shoulders back, knees relaxed, bump that drawer shut, okay? Another way is if you take a broomstick or a PVC pipe, anything like this, we're going to hold it behind us. We want to try and get contact in three places: at the head, the mid-back, and down by the sacrum, just below the waistline or the belt line. Okay, from here, we're going to move forward without losing contact at any of those points. Okay, if I'm to do a coupled motion, I come forward, that shoots up off of that lowest point. Okay, so by keeping contact, I have to hip hinge. Okay, coupled motion, it shoots up. Then we got the hip hinge. Okay. And then once we use those for a little while, we step away and we try and feel that motion in our body without any props. Okay? So to start, we can just have a target behind us. We're trying to bump a wall. Okay? That can be helpful because if I couple that motion, it's hard for me to get back there. I have to kind of lean back against it. And then finally, we move away from anything and we work on that hip hinge here. Okay? It could be helpful to maybe set up a camera or have a friend film you so you can see, do you keep this nice straight angle of the back, or do you start to come forward? Okay? And then we can do some little holds here. Okay? I can try and just feel the tension in my hamstrings, squeeze my glutes, weight is on my heels, hold for 20 or 30 seconds, and then come up. Okay? We can hold here and then reach overhead. And that increases the challenge, okay, because we have all of the muscles of the torso now engaged. And then in the gym, we can transition this to working on a deadlift, which is just picking something up and down from the floor with a hip hinge. Or a kettlebell swing, is you get the hips hinging behind you as you're holding a weight in your hands. Okay, there's a lot of ways to train it, But these are some of the drills that I find useful, and often, even if you're in pain, we can start with these, and you get some muscle engagement, some recruitment, some new motor patterns, and it can help to tamp down that pain. Okay, so give the hip hinge a shot. Let me know how it goes.